Everyone thinks America broke its biggest monopoly in 1911, but the truth? The system Rockefeller built didn't collapse, it scaled. And by 2025, it controls more of your life than Standard Oil ever did. Look, people keep saying that was a different era. But here's the twist. Nothing about the playbook changed. Not the integration, not the consolidation, not the influence strategy. I spent 2 weeks going through archive filings, antitrust documents, Rockefeller memos, and the 10Ks of Amazon, Google, Chevron, JP Morgan, Pfizer, dozens of them. The patterns were identical, not similar, identical. If you use the internet, shop online, fill your gas tank, or take medication, you're operating inside this system every day. And the reason it feels inescapable? Because it was engineered that way. What I uncovered around the 12-minute mark was the part that honestly stunned me. The breakup, the mergers, the competition, all of it follows the same predictable loop. But to understand the loop, you need the first piece. Because this is where Rockefeller's architecture begins. The mainstream story goes like this. Rockefeller monopolized oil. Government broke him up. Free markets won. America was saved. End of lesson. And that's exactly what textbooks teach. Documentaries repeat it. College courses reinforce it. But here's the contradiction. If the government destroyed the monopoly, why does every major corporation in 2025 run Rockefeller's exact playbook? Here's what people miss. The breakup didn't dismantle the system. It replicated it. It multiplied it. It disguised it. And the first red flag is simple. Rockefeller became richer after the breakup. That's not a victory for antitrust. That's the blueprint for what came next. And that's not even the surprising part. Picture the oil industry in 1870. Chaotic, inefficient, unpredictable. Most refiners barely understood their own costs. Rockefeller didn't try to compete. He removed competition from the equation entirely. He bought barrel factories, owned tank cars, signed secret railroad rebates, built warehouses, created his own distribution network. Everything his competitors paid for, he owned. This turned every cost structure into a weapon. Competitors paid 25 cents for a barrel. Rockefeller paid 15. That margin advantage was lethal. Every slice of the supply chain competitors depended on, Rockefeller internalized. He didn't play the game, he redesigned it. Fast forward 155 years. Amazon controls warehouses, logistics, trucking fleets, planes, payment systems, data centers. Google controls search, ads, Android, YouTube, cloud, hardware. Pharma controls research, trials, patents, manufacturing, distribution. This isn't adaptation, it's inheritance. Okay, but someone might say, vertical integration doesn't prove a monopoly. True, it only proves the foundation. The next step proves the intent. The Cleveland Massacre. Rockefeller approached every refinery in Cleveland, 26 in total. His offer was simple. Sell to Standard Oil, or Standard Oil will price you into bankruptcy. Those were the only two options. Refuse? He cut prices below cost until your margins imploded. Accept? He paid in Standard Oil stock, not cash, ensuring you joined the empire. 3 months later, he controlled 25 of the 26 refineries. By 1879, he controlled 90% of U.S. refining. The strategy was elegant. Consolidation through choice, engineered by force. Today, the tactic survived evolution. Amazon buys Twitch, Whole Foods, Zappos, Ring, MGM. Google buys YouTube, Android, Waze, Nest, DeepMind. Meta buys Instagram and WhatsApp. When they can't buy, they clone. They underprice, they force integration. This isn't innovation, it's absorption. Stay with me, because the next move is the part almost no one learns in school. Rockefeller's lawyers invent something the world had never seen. The Standard Oil Trust, a multi-layered holding company that owned dozens of smaller corporations. Not directly, indirectly. Through trustees, through shells, through controlled subsidiaries, it became the prototype for every modern conglomerate. Alphabet owns Google, YouTube, Waymo, DeepMind. Meta owns Facebook, Instagram, WhatsApp. Berkshire Hathaway owns 60-plus companies. JP Morgan sits on top of hundreds of legal entities. The trust structure does one thing exceptionally well. It separates power from visibility, legality from control, accountability from action. This matters because the trust made Rockefeller immune to the breakup. He didn't dismantle his monopoly, he distributed it. The government broke the body. Rockefeller kept the nervous system. Here's what's really happening. The Rockefeller system didn't disappear in 1911. It decentralized. It diversified. It became the invisible operating system of modern corporate power. When a company owns every mile of the supply chain, you don't choose the price, you receive it. Startups don't compete with giants. They exit to giants. That's not a marketplace. That's a conveyor belt. The institutions meant to regulate industries are influenced, staffed, or funded by those industries. But here's the thing. This isn't a conspiracy. It's documented corporate strategy. The part that shocked me most wasn't consolidation. It was the philanthropic layer, the move that looks charitable but shifts the direction of entire fields: medicine, education, public research. This isn't about telling you what stock to buy. It's about seeing the architecture that shapes your economic reality. Once you understand the system, you understand why certain companies always rise and why others never stand a chance. We're now moving to the layer most people never hear about: regulatory capture and influence engineering. Rockefeller didn't fear regulation, he anticipated it, then he shaped it. He lobbied for railroad rules only Standard Oil could satisfy. He helped set kerosene purity laws his competitors couldn't meet. He influenced pricing structures competitors couldn't afford. Today, the same mechanism runs through multiple sectors. Pharma funds the FDA through user fees. Big tech writes privacy laws. Banks helped draft key Dodd-Frank exemptions. Here's what's interesting. The more regulated an industry becomes, the easier it is for the dominant players to keep control. Regulation becomes a moat, a barrier, a fortress. And this is exactly where Rockefeller's philanthropic influence comes in. Because the next step in the playbook is not about money, it's about shaping the intellectual environment. People assume Rockefeller's power came from oil, but that was only the entry point. The real engine, the part almost no one talks about, was his ability to shape institutions, not businesses. Institutions. Because when you shape institutions, you don't influence markets, you influence the people who create markets. Stay with me. This is where the playbook turns from aggressive capitalism into long-term system design. Rockefeller understood something revolutionary for his time. Reputation protects influence. Influence shapes policy. Policy shapes markets. And markets shape wealth. So in 1913, he creates the Rockefeller Foundation. To most people, this looked like charity. Hospitals, universities, public health campaigns. It all looked good, because a lot of it was good. But behind the positive impact was something more strategic. Philanthropy became Rockefeller's long-term policy lever. When the foundation funded medical schools, it shaped the model of medicine taught in America, a model centered on pharmaceuticals. When the foundation funded universities, it shaped the curriculum, the research priorities, and the next generation of policymakers. When the foundation funded scientific research, it shaped which theories became mainstream and which were quietly ignored. Here's the twist. Most early pharmaceutical companies were descendants of Standard Oil's chemical divisions. The pipeline from Rockefeller-funded medical education to Rockefeller-connected pharma was not accidental. It was architectural. Fast forward to today, the Gates Foundation, the Chan Zuckerberg Initiative, the Howard Hughes Medical Institute run similar models at scale. This isn't about villainizing philanthropy. It's about showing how influence compounds across generations. Because when you can guide education, research, public health, and the regulatory environment, you don't need to own the corporations. You own the ecosystem. Now let's connect the dots between influence and regulation. Now, Rockefeller didn't fight regulators. He aligned with them. He helped shape the rules that would govern the industry. And those rules always fit Standard Oil better than anyone else. He understood that complexity protects scale. The harder compliance becomes, the more impossible it is for small players to operate. And the safer the monopoly becomes behind the wall of regulation. Today, this loop repeats across industries. FDA user fees mean companies fund their own regulator. More fees, faster approvals. Who can afford that? Only industry giants. Big tech spends the most on lobbying. Privacy laws are written by committees whose members previously worked for them. Banks helped write key exemptions inside the Dodd-Frank Act. Compliance requirements became so expensive that community banks couldn't keep up, leaving the giants untouched. Here's the pattern across all sectors. Regulation becomes a moat, and complexity becomes the price of entry. This was Rockefeller's fourth step, and it's still running, unchanged. Now we hit one of the biggest misconceptions in American economic history. Most people think the government destroyed Rockefeller's monopoly in 1911. The headlines say it, textbooks say it, documentaries repeat it. Here's the reality. The breakup made Rockefeller wealthier. Standard Oil was split into 34 companies. Standard Oil of New Jersey, Exxon, Standard Oil of New York, Mobil, Standard Oil of California, Chevron, Standard Oil of Indiana, Amoco, Standard Oil of Ohio, Sohio, later BP. Rockefeller owned shares in all 34 companies. Before the breakup, Standard Oil stock was $600. After, the combined value of the 34 companies hit $2,000. Rockefeller's net worth tripled. Here's what almost no one realizes. Breaking the company increased competition between Rockefeller's own companies, which increased market value, which increased dividends, which increased his wealth. It wasn't punishment, it was multiplication. And it gets even crazier. Throughout the 20th century, the pieces slowly found their way back together. 1999, Exxon merges with Mobil. Chevron acquires multiple Standard Oil descendants. BP acquires Amoco and Sohio. The monopoly that was destroyed in 1911 quietly reformed itself over the next 100 years. This wasn't illegal. This wasn't secret. This was simply the natural endpoint of a system designed to never truly break. Once you understand this, the modern parallels snap into place. Big tech breakups won't kill big tech. They'll replicate the Standard Oil effect. They'll create dozens of smaller companies that still operate on the same architecture with the same shareholders and the same core systems. The monopoly won't disappear. It will distribute itself, just like Rockefeller did. So what does the Rockefeller system look like today? It looks like Amazon owning the rails of the digital economy: cloud, logistics, payments, media, retail. It looks like Google owning discovery: search, YouTube, Android, maps, tracking. It looks like Pfizer, Johnson & Johnson, and Merck owning research pipelines, patents, supply chains, and influence. It looks like JP Morgan, BlackRock, and Vanguard owning layers of the financial ecosystem, from mortgages to money markets to ETFs. The Rockefeller system isn't outdated, it's thriving, it's everywhere. And it evolved to be more invisible than ever. Here's the crazy part. You don't need to own 90% of a market today to control it. You only need to own the platforms everyone else depends on. Rockefeller owned rails and refineries. Amazon owns cloud and logistics. Google owns data and discovery. Pfizer owns patents and approvals. Different industries, same geometry. Look, I can't predict the future. But here's what the evidence shows. Rockefeller didn't build an oil monopoly. He built a system for controlling markets through integration, consolidation, regulatory influence, and institutional shaping. That system survived the breakup. It survived the 20th century. And in the digital age, it is more powerful than ever. My position is this: if you want to understand Amazon, Google, big pharma, big banks, don't study their products, study their architecture. Because architecture outlives companies. I didn't expect this, but the real question isn't whether monopolies exist today. It's this: did monopolies ever actually end? Remember the moment in the cold open? The claim that the system never died? Now you've seen the evidence: the vertical control, the horizontal absorption, the trust structure, the regulatory moat, the philanthropic lever, the reconsolidation, the digital evolution. This isn't about Rockefeller, it's about the architecture of power that still shapes your world. And the next episode dives into how this system affects your job, your investments, and the choices you think you're making freely. Thanks for watching. And trust me, what's coming next makes this episode look like the introduction